And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Once again, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have everybody here once again here on this Friday, January 5th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about. So, we're pretty much just going to preview all the games for this weekend. If you tuned in for the GSMC Baseball Podcast show, I basically said that. That's what we're going to do. The National Championship is on Monday, so I'll talk about that on Monday. Yeah, and I didn't screw up saying the wrong podcast that I was doing because I did that on the baseball show. I said going into the first break, I said stick around for the GSMC Football Podcast. We'll be right back. But it was the baseball show. It was the baseball podcast. So hopefully that doesn't happen for this show, and I say the baseball show instead. But yeah. So let's get right into the Saturday games here, because we'll start off previewing those games. So 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Both games will be on ABC. There's no Monday night game, of course. Well, National Championship being on Monday. Also it being the last week of the regular season. And also there's no Thursday night game to talk about, too. So, yeah, it's just the games on the weekend. So you got the Steelers and the Ravens as the first game. And then you have the Texans and the Colts for the second game. So with the Steelers and the Ravens, it's going to be interesting because the Ravens, it doesn't seem like they're going to be playing their starters. I know I've talked about, this leading up into the game. And, obviously when they did this a few years ago, Lamar Jackson's MVP season, they came out flat against the Titans in the divisional round, and they ended up getting eliminated. So you would think that some of the starters are going to play, of course. Lamar Jackson probably isn't going to play, I don't think, unless something was confirmed. But I'm pretty sure he was not going to play tomorrow. But let's just take a quick look. Yeah, so he's not going to play against the Steelers. It's going to be Tyler Huntley. But this is a big game for the Steelers because, if they win, that really benefits. That benefits them because they're fighting for a playoff spot, of course, trying to get one of the wild cards. If they win, they go 10-7. They've won their last two games after going on that 3-game losing streak against the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Colts. They've scored 30 points in back-to-back weeks. Mason Rudolph has played well since he's taken over, as the starting quarterback. Kenny Pickett's healthy, but they're still sticking with Rudolph. But even with the Ravens' backups in, I think this is still going to be a tough game. I think the Steelers still win the game, but I think it's going to be close. Right now, the Ravens are 3-point underdogs. I'd take the points. I think this game definitely will be close. You even go back to last year, Kenny Pickett had to have that game-winning drive. I talked about that. Him connecting with Najee Harris for that touchdown to win the game. That was against Tyler Huntley. I think we could see something similar to that, it being a 3-point game. So I take the Ravens with the points, but I think the Steelers will win. If we look at the league rankings for both teams, obviously it's going to be different because you're not going to see, some of the Ravens starters playing, and the Steelers, the quarterback carousel throughout the season. So at when you look at passing yards per game, you got the Steelers at 29, and the Ravens are at 21. And then rushing yards, You got the Steelers are at 12. The Ravens are at number 1. Then points per game, of course, the Ravens are second, and the Steelers are 27th. And if you could hear in the background, my dog is chewing on something, and of course she's doing it right up against the door. So I'm like trying to. That's what you're hearing in the background is her right up against my door, having to do that, and that's why I'm like trying hard not to laugh right now. And then when you look on the defensive side of the ball for both teams, the Ravens are 9th, Steelers are 23rd. Against the run, the Ravens are 13th, the Steelers are 18th, and then points allowed, the Ravens defense is 1, the Steelers are 7th. So, man, I don't know why I'm like it's hard for me not to laugh, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, I think the Steelers should win, but it's going to be tough. Regardless. I mean, this is a rivalry game. I mean, even with the Ravens backups in, it's still going to be tough. And I don't trust the Steelers to cover here. So I'm going to take the Ravens with the points, but I think the Steelers win. I go to 10-7. Mike Tomlin's got another winning season. So yeah. And then we go to the second game. You got the Texans and the Colts. Of course, that's the bigger game of the two. So yeah, I mean, if the Steelers lose, I mean, they need a lot of things for them to, go right for them. With this game here, I mean, even if like one of these teams loses, they're not. I mean, they still have. I mean, still have a decent chance to maybe make the playoffs. I think the Texans are going to win. The last time these two teams met, this was all the way back in. What was it? It was week 2. 31 to 20 was a score. That was back Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud were going at it for the first time. And let's see. So C.J. Stroud, 30 of 47, 384 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Actually, Anthony Richardson got hurt in this game. Gardner Minshew actually played most of it. Went 19 of 23, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Yeah, this game happened so long ago. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, now you got C.J. Stroud back, made his return last week, had a good game. The Colts, coming off of a win against the Raiders. I like the Texans to win this game. If we look at the league rankings for both of these teams, so the Texans are 4th in passing yards per game. The Colts are 20th. Rushing yards per game, the Colts are 13th. Texans are 22nd. Points per game, the Colts are 10th, and the Texans are 14th. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Colts are 16th against the passing yards per game. Texans are 27th. Rushing yards, the Texans are actually 3rd against the run. The Colts are 27th. And then points allowed, Texans are 13th. The Colts are 27th. But I think this is going to be a nail-biter too. I mean, listen, I give the Colts a lot of credit. I give both teams a lot of credit. I mean, we really didn't expect, these teams to be in this position. With the Jags struggling, now they got a chance at winning the division. The Jags obviously, have a divisional game against the Titans on Sunday. And, the Colts being at home, it's going to be tough, but I don't know. I like the Texans right now. The line actually did move, at least on CBS. So, it started out with the Texans being a 1-point underdog. Now they're a 1-point favorite. I like them in this game. You got Stroud back. You got Nico Collins back. Again, it's going to be tough, but I feel like the Colts can win this game. I mean, both teams can win this game, but I like the Texans here. But I think it's going to be really close. It is going to be really close. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I'd like to see Jonathan Taylor get the ball more because he scored. He scored a rushing touchdown. In back-to-back weeks, and then he hasn't. Then they don't really. He hasn't really done anything. Actually, let's look at his stats from the last couple of weeks. So, Yeah, the last 2 weeks. Well, actually, no, he's gotten a lot of carries though. I mean, 18 carries last week. Well, 2 weeks ago, 21 carries against the Raiders. But yeah, not a lot of big runs from him. His longest run this year was a 42-yard run against the Saints. But yeah, last week it was 15. Week before that was 13. But yeah, I mean, he has scored a rushing touchdown. In the last 4 games that he's played in. So, but we'll see if he can have a monster game here because they're going to need it. And the Colts, they have a good running game, with him and Zach Moss, who's run the ball effectively this year. So, we'll see what ends up happening here. But yeah, I got the Texans winning. I'm going to say it's going to be like a field goal game. Maybe it's going to be like 23-20, something like that. But we'll see. I mean, you're going to feel bad for whoever loses this game. But then you just got to hope that the Jags maybe lose. I mean, I think it'll hurt. It's going to hurt the Colts more if they lose because I know because they lost to Jacksonville twice. The Texans, they at least, they beat the Jags. They split with them. So, but we'll see. These games both should be close, I would say. But, the way I pick, I mean, again, last week I got 8 wins. These last, 8 weeks I've gotten 7 or 8 wins. I mean, I've just been that consistent, that average, all year. There was that 1 week I got 12. There was 2 weeks that I got 5. The first 2 weeks I got 9, which was good. But I have, I mostly get either 7 or 8 wins, which is ridiculous. But these 2 games I'm kind of set on who I'm going to pick, which is not good because one of them I'm going to. I haven't done good on these Saturday triple headers or the last week's game I took the Cowboys. I laid the points, but it didn't pan out. So yeah, it's we'll see what happens. Hopefully this is the week that I end up finally winning a week in the spread pool, but I say that every week. It's probably not going to happen. So but when we come back from our first break of the show, we're going to preview all the early window games. A lot of these games, these are the less important games. In the early slate, the later half is where you got all of the, all the team, most of the teams fighting for playoff spots and things like that. But we'll go through the games in the early slate. We'll talk about them. I'll give you my picks. Again, some of them will be subject to change because I just don't know. There's some teams that you don't know, like who's playing and who's not playing. But yeah. Also, actually, the other thing I forgot to mention with the Ravens. So they actually signed Dalvin Cook. So the Jets cut him. The Ravens picked him up. So he's going to be part of their backfield, and we'll see what he ends up doing with them. If he can maybe find some, find that pre-Jets era Dalvin Cook. We'll see if he could find, himself looking more like the Vikings Dalvin Cook as opposed to what, he looked like with the Jets. But, yeah, I forgot to mention that. So, yeah, when we come back from our first break, we'll talk about the early window games. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.